Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from Chicopee, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. He offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
Yes, and this is at a very far-flung part of the canal, so I don't often very much reach it.
And so today he'll be talking about the Holyoke paper mill. So tell us of the origins of the Holyoke paper mill.
All right, it started in the year 1856 by David Butterfield, and he started this mill at a node that was developing. In the beginning, some of the first mills in the canal system were right near the junction of where the water came in from the gatehouse near the first and second level canal. But then another node started where the second level canal came near the third level canal. And this was one of the part of the canal that was built very early on. And at this position, you're getting a drop of water of 12 feet only. But that's fine. This was a small mill. The Holyoke paper mill was probably the tiniest paper mill in Holyoke, although it was the second oldest paper mill in Holyoke. And so they started out here, very obscure places, but a lot of other small mills did too. The Connor Silk Mill did also, and other small mills. So we're going to talk about what happened, what was made at this place, and then what happened to it after a while. It actually became part of the Holyoke Water Power's electric system. And then are there any remnants of this left? And what was the mill actually like? Now, if you had gone out there, you would have seen a beautiful mill, and I have seen pictures of it. It's very tiny, but you would see a mill that was 3 floors high with one extra floor on the top. And what you would have seen is power production off the first level canal's water going through its race system, which was then put into the third level canal. And it had a special race just for itself. And I'm going to tell you what each floor was doing along the way, and that'll help you understand what kind of things they're making. But usually paper mills specialize. Now this one here, it made a lot of papers for people to write messages, and also made the envelopes. So it made very fancy envelopes and writing paper, so a gentleman or a lady can write a note to each other and mail it out. That's why a lot of the envelopes from the 1860s, 70s, 80s are very fancy looking. And they had a very beautiful linen surface to them. The item could come to you in a lot of different shapes and sizes, so they specialize in cutting them up as much as possible. And of course, the parchment color and the parchment type also changed. So they tried to make some of it very, very nice, some of it a little less than that, so the normal person could afford it. And they have their own brands. They actually were so good that at the Paris Expedition of 1878, they won a gold medal for their brand of parchment called the Banker's Parchment. So they were excellent, and people would love the paper by the name of it because they knew it was good quality. And nowadays, people don't always do that. And its production wasn't enormous, but just by what they made, it became a well-known company.
And how did production take place in this mill?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you about different floors along the way. And like all paper mills, you start, almost all paper mills except the Newton and the Chemical, which made cardboard, but the true paper mills, they start production on the topmost floor, and then they work downwards. And they do that because you get the original material up to the upper floor, and then through shafts you bring it down to the next floor. And so the Holyoke Paper Company like every other paper company in Holyoke, they did things on given floors that were different from the floor below it. Okay, and what were they doing? On the third floor and in the attic, they had a dry room where they would start to dry out the paper that had been made, all right? And then they'd bring it down to the next floor, and there they would start to shape its dimensions, right? And then they'd bring it down to the next floor. And the next floor, they would put lines on the paper or color the paper, so forth. Right? They may put a fancy letterhead on the top for certain kinds of paper. And they mostly did this production throughout the middle horizontal portions. In the back portion, it was the engine room, where the water was brought in horizontal, then dropped over the engine. And in the back also were the chemical storage and chemical use, like a bleach house and other water and other chemical additives. If you look at it from the second level canal to the third level canal, towards the right would have been the administration and also the specialty rooms like the repair room and the finishing room and then the storage rooms. And then towards the left, you'd have more storage rooms, and then also not only storage of finished product, but storage of the start product, which mostly was rags, cotton clothes rag, that you wanted to pick apart. And that was brought up in shafts up to the top floor, and their production would start.
And before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour, and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you are interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, and they are perfect for fun educational outdoor activities for the whole family, or for your group parties, especially the special occasions and get-togethers. They're also good just for getting outdoors today. So, getting back to our interview, what took the place of the Holyoke paper mill?
Okay, now this is peculiar because through time, this was a very old mill, made in 1856 and finished in 1857. And that was before there was electricity. And so the mill operated throughout the decades. And then once you get into about the 1920s and the early 1930s, you start to have greater and greater need for electricity. Electricity had come to Holyoke in the year 1895. And so at that point, more of these mills would have more and more need for electricity and less need for the Holyoke water power is power. And so what they did, probably in the early 1930s, is they took down the entire Holyoke paper mill and put in its place, over its race, they put in a power station on the canal to make electricity. So they left the turbine there and started making power only out of it. And so they substituted a mill for an electric power station. Now, this had not been done anywhere else in Holyoke. Every power station before that was put on an empty space somewhere, and there's 5 of them, but they're always put on empty spaces, except this one, which took the place of the Holyoke paper mill. That's very peculiar, but that's how much they needed electricity compared to just needing needing a mill space.
And where can one view this mill's remnants?
Okay, now this mill, you may say it's totally gone. Well, I told you at least the place that they made the power with the turbine is still there. But another remnant that you can see is that, and this is peculiar, because if you go to Main Street, where 391 comes on the Main Street, and then look towards the west, you're going to see the juncture of the second and third level canal right off of South Ray Street. And as you face into it, the wall of the canal has a special tunnel that you can see. That's the race or the tunnel that was underneath the Holyoke paper mill company. and still is used to make electricity. And it's very obvious where it is. And the walls of the canal at that point are very strong, and you can actually see through them being built up where the remnants of the Holyoke paper mill were. So it's very strange. You can see electricity generated there, and the buildup of an old paper mill in its place. And you can see it was very small, but from what I described, it's a very important place. And one last important thing that will lead on to other mills is that a person named William Whiten started his career in this Holyoke paper mill as an accountant. And William Whiten went on to be one of the most famous men in the history of Holyoke. He started his own paper mill that was enormous. He became mayor, and then he came other political jobs at the state level. And can you imagine, he started his career in this tiny little paper mill. Thank you very much.
And so thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours, and we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. You can also tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website. Again, that's holyokecanaltour.org. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214@yahoo.com. And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available. Thank you.